Okay, so good morning students. We have already discussed about the mouth parts in lecture. So most of you are telling that you are not able to understand the mouth parts. So what I am doing is I am sending you the video with the lecture with the audio sound. So on these mouth parts. So as we have already discussed, there are 4 different types of mouth parts. Okay, basic 4 different types of mouth parts. Apart from that, there are more, but there are 4 basic types. So what are the 4 basic types? These 4 basic type of mouth parts are mostly associated with the feeding habits of the insects. So first is the biting and chewing type of mouth part. So the insects which mostly feed on solid hard objects, they will have the biting and the chewing type of mouth parts, as we see it here. In case of example is cockroach. So for any type of mouth parts, the general concept, you have to first remember the general concept. What are the things that you will find? So first we start with the biting and chewing. So these has got all the mouth parts that are actually present in the insects. And in the later mouth parts that we will see, we will find some modifications. So you see the upper lip, there is an upper lip which is called the labrum. Okay. And then there is a lower lip which is called the labium. Now in between the labrum and the labium, here if you see the diagram, the figure, so this is the labrum, okay, and then this is the labium. Now in between the labrum and the labium, you will find 2 pairs of mandibles. So the first pair, 2 pairs of jaws, sorry. So the first pair is called the mandible. So this is the first mandible, this is the second mandible. Now if you see, in case of biting and chewing type, the mandibles on their inner margin, they have got teeth-like structures which are called the denticles. These are meant for chewing. Now the labrum is a hard structure and it has got some sensory structures which are called the setae, hair-like structure or bristle-like structures. Okay. Now coming to the lower jaw, that is the maxilla. Now here again the maxilla are 2 in number. So as you can see the maxilla, first maxilla, second maxilla. Now the maxilla on its outer side is associated with some sensory structures, sensory appendages. So you can see it is an appendage because it is jointed structure, jointed appendage. So these are called the maxillary pulps. So the pulps or the appendages, sensory in nature associated with the maxilla, are called the maxillary pulps. Now on this maxilla are meant for biting. Okay, so if you see the maxilla on its inner surface, has got the inner hard structure, this dark brown structure. This is called the lacina. This lacina is meant for cutting or biting. Now the labrum has got a epipharynx, whereas the labium, the lower lip, is associated with the hypopharynx. Now this hypopharynx carries the salivary gland or the duct of the salivary gland. So this is about the, in brief about the biting and chewing type of mouth parts. Now let us come to the second type of mouth part, that is the piercing and sucking type. The piercing and sucking type, this type of mouth part is mainly found in insects which have got a which generally pierce the tissues, the skin of the host, and they suck the body fluid or the blood. Now in case of piercing and sucking type of mouth parts, so the mouth parts that you had seen, the lips, there is a labrum and the labium, the mandibles, the maxillae, the palps, they are all modified to pierce the skin and so as to damage the capillaries under the skin, which creates a pool of blood. So blood accumulates under the skin. So we'll see it in the next slide, and then it will form, then from that blood pool, the blood will be sucked up by negative pressure. So the main structure that you see in case of the mosquito or the biting and which is having a biting and sucking type of mouth parts is called the biting fascicle. As you can see here, there is a piercing. It is the main piercing structure which is called the fascicle or the stylet. So what does the fascicle consist of? It consists of the labrum. Okay, it consists of the labrum. It consists of the maxilla. The maxilla is paired and it has got a serrated tip. So here you can see all the structures. There are two maxilla, one labrum, and then there are mandibles and hypopharynx that carries the salivary duct. Now this salivary duct is very important because it produces the anticoagulant. So whenever it is pierced, the blood vessel or the capillaries are damaged, the blood comes out, it is very necessary that there has to be some anticoagulant which is secreted from the saliva so as to prevent the clotting of the blood. So all this labrum, the maxilla, paired maxilla having serrated ends, the hypopharynx and the mandible, two mandibles. So you can see here there are two mandibles, two maxilla, hypopharynx and the labrum. They all together form the piercing structure of the fascicle or the stylet. Stylet, as you can see, stylets, you have seen stylets which are used for pricking the finger to take out the blood. So that is called a stylet, a piercing structure. So this, all the biting fascicle or the stylet is located on the dorsal groove. Okay. So what you will find is here, you will find is, so you can see here this structure, sorry. So you can find this structure. This structure is called this is the labium. Now there you can see a groove. So all this, that is the two maxillae, two mandibles, hypopharynx and the labrum, they all, this forming the stylet, they are all located in this groove of the labium. Now the labium at its end, as you can see here in the tip, at its end it has got sensory structure or swollen structure which is called the labella. So when the mosquito sits, so let's go to the next slide. So as you can see, this is the labium, all the biting fascicles, okay, they group together inside the labium, and when the mosquito sits on the host, skin of the host, with the help of the labella, it senses, okay, and then with the muscular action, all this biting fascicle is pushed, just like a needle, it is pushed into the skin. Pushed into the skin, as you can see in the next figure, here it has been pushed into the skin. And pushed into the skin, this has gone into the capillary. Okay, once it gets into the capillary is damaged, the blood will come out and up to the skin, and by capillary action it will be sucked up through the labium into the mouth. So this is the piercing and sucking type of mouth parts. Now coming to the next slide, this is the cutting and sponging type, also known as the slashing and sponging type. So what is the slashing and sponging type? This type of mouth parts you will find mostly in the biting flies. Example, the tabanid flies. So what are the tabanid flies? I hope you have been told already about the tabanid flies. The tabanid flies includes tabanus, hematopoda, chrysops. Now here again, instead of piercing, so whatever structures we had seen, what are the structures we had seen? The mandible, the maxilla and the labrum, they were meant for piercing. Here instead of piercing, they form structures like cutting plates or blades. Rather we can say they form cutting blades, or they form like blades of scissor so that they can cut the skin. Okay, so what are the structures you see here? So what you see here is, in case of the extreme left side, as you can see, is the labrum, they are the maxilla. So this is the first maxilla, and here there is another maxilla. So this thin, almost this structure, this one and this one, these are the two maxilla. Okay, this maxilla have got inner serrated margin. On their margin they are like a hacksaw blade. आड़ी आपको समझ में आता है, तो अंदर की तरफ इनको इनर साइड में आड़ी की तरह इनका structure रहता है. That helps them in cutting. Now these two structures, these blade-like structures, as you can see, these two blade-like structures. Rather, you can see that they are blades of a scissor. जैसे कैंची के blade होते हैं दो. So these two are the blade-like structures, and these two blade-like structures, they are nothing but the mandibles. Okay. Now this central structure, this is like a double-edged blade, दूधारी तलवार. So this double-edged structure, double-edged sword-like structure is also meant for cutting. This is the labrum epipharynx. Okay. So these structures, so two maxillae, two mandibles, and one labrum epipharynx, they form the cutting structure or the cutting blades. And as you can see, this here, okay, this thick structure, this one, ये जो बड़ा सा structure है, enlarged structure, this one here in the center, this structure is the labium, and the labium is enlarged at its end, forming the labella. So how the labella looks like? So if you see, this is how the labella looks like. Now the labella has got grooves. Here it is, I am going to musca, but all labella, they have similar structure which are meant for sponging. So what happens in case of the tabanid flies, they sit, cut the skin with the cutting blades, maxilla, mandibles, and this labrum epipharynx. The blood comes out. So because of this cutting or slushing activity, the bite is very painful. The bite is very painful. जो डांस जब काटता है तो बहुत दर्द होता है, और and the blood oozes out. Okay, and when this blood oozes out, this labella is placed. ये labella को वो gently place कर देता है blood के ऊपर, and capillary, with the capillary action, all the blood is sponged. So it is a sponging action. जैसे आप ये करो, अगर घर में पानी गिर जाए तो आप कपड़ा डालते हो, कपड़ा डाल के उसको सुखाते हो. कपड़ा क्या करता है? स्पॉन्जिंग एक्शन से, कैपिलरी एक्शन से पानी को खींच लेता है. सो दैट इज व्हाई दिस इज कॉल्ड द कटिंग एंड स्पॉन्जिंग टाइप ऑफ माउथ पार्ट्स. नाउ कमिंग टू द fourth type of mouth part, that is the sponging type of mouth part. So in sponging type of mouth part, this mouth part is mainly you will find in case of musket flies, Musca domestica. So in this kind of flies, they are mainly feed on liquid food or semi-liquid food. Okay, so they don't feed on any tissue, hard structure. Neither do they feed on the body fluids, so blood or lymph. So what they require is, so most of the structures, the mandibles, as you can see, they are absent. They're almost absent because they don't require it for biting or piercing or cutting, nothing. Maxillae, because they are not required again. Jaws are not required because you don't have to bite, you don't have to pierce, you don't have to cut. So the jaws, they are reduced. The mandibles, they become absent or vestigial. Maxillae, they become vestigial. Maxillary pulps remain. So maxillary pulps are essential. They are meant for sensory. I already told you they are sensory in nature. So maxillary pulps are there. In all my mouth parts you will find maxillary pulps. So labrum epipharynx is there. Okay. Labium hypopharynx is there. It carries the salivary duct or the salivary gland. Here this labium epipharynx is very important. You can see the labium here. Okay. So this labium is very important because it carries the duct of the salivary gland, and this saliva is very important. So suppose if it is a semi-dry or semi-liquid kind of a food, the saliva comes out and it helps it to moisten the food. And at the end of the labium you will find is the labella. And on the ventral surface of the labella there is a pseudotrachea. What is pseudotrachea? Pseudotrachea is nothing. So this is the electron micrograph structure of the pseudotrachea. You can see why it is called a pseudotrachea. So you can see here it is small grooves, very fine grooves are there. It looks as if like branching. So there is a central structure and it looks there is a branching. Tubes are going into this central tube. So like you have got the trachea, which is the respiratory tract of the from the spiracles opening. There are tracheoles and then trachea. So it looks like trachea, but they are not trachea. They are actually grooves. They are not closed tubes. So these grooves meet up at a central groove. So whatever liquid material, it is just like a sponge. So this labella will be placed on the food. The liquid material will be collected by capillary action. It will flow through these grooves and through these grooves into the central groove. So through the pseudotrachea, it will go into the central groove, and then by capillary action, it will be drawn in. So this is called the sponging type of mouthparts you will find in musca, in case of musca. Okay, another type of piercing and sucking type you will find in case of stomoxis. The stomoxis also you have the piercing and sucking type. Here what you have again, since this is a musket fly, here you don't have the mandibles. In case of mosquito, you had seen mandibles, you have seen maxillae, but again here, since they are musket flies, the mandibles and the mandibles are absent. Maxillae become vestigial, maxillary pulps are there. The main important lies here is case of musca is the labrum epipharynx. Okay, so here you can see this is the labrum here. Sorry, just come. I have to close this. Okay, so you can see the labrum here. Okay, and then this is the hypopharynx. This is the hypopharynx. Labrum and epipharynx, they are fused. So labrum epipharynx, and this is the labium hypopharynx. So as you can see, the labrum here, they form the pointed structure. Labrum and the hypopharynx, they form the pointed structure. Okay, and these are the piercing structures. And instead of labium, the labium here you can see they don't have the pseudotrachea. They don't have the pseudotrachea. They are rather hard structures. They are not spongy. They are hard structures and have got serrated margin. As you can see here, this has got a serrated margin. This is for piercing. So there is no mandible, no maxilla, but you have no mandible, no maxilla, but you have the labrum and the hypopharynx. So here the labrum and the hypopharynx, which form the piercing structure. Okay, and the food canal passes through this. They close together, they pierce. So they pierce, the blood comes out, and this is sucked in through the food canal, which is formed between the labrum and the hypopharynx. So with this I end this particular video. I think if you have any doubts, you can contact me, and it will be nice. So stay safe. Thank you.